The PCB Editor Skill API includes functions that allow you to programmatically select elements for processing, using the same mechanism that is used for standard PCB editor commands. In general, when running a command, you will set the find filter, let the user build the selection set, and then operate on the elements in the selection set. Skill provides API functions for these steps, so that you can either programmatically build a selection set or let the user build the selection set. We will show the skill selection mechanism by writing a skill function that will let the user select an area of the open design and report any connect line segments that have a length that is less than half the width of the connect line segment. If we look at our design, we see this funny little connect line segment with a width of 20. So this is one of the connect line segments that we would like to report. Let's open our text editor and define a procedure named rpt small segs that accepts no arguments. Just like standard PCB editor interactive commands, the selection of elements is based on visibility and on the find filter. It's reasonable to assume that the user is responsible for turning on the layers they wish to process before making a selection of connect line segments to process. So the first thing we need to do is set our find filter. The skill find filter is modeled after the interactive find filter, and items in the find filter can be programmatically enabled and disabled, as well as turned on or turned off. When you begin a PCB editor session, the skill find filter starts with no objects enabled and no objects turned on, and the axlSetFindFilter function is used to set the skill find filter. The axlSetFindFilter function has two keyword arguments that allow you to supply a list of items to be enabled in the find filter and the items that will be turned on in the find filter. A subset of the strings for the items that can be turned on and enabled are shown here, and you can refer to the PCB Editor Skill Reference Manual for the complete list. All the keywords can also be prefixed with no to remove the item from the list, and it's worth mentioning that the axlSetFindFilter function is cumulative, so enabling and turning on connect line segments in the filter will allow you to select connect line segments along with everything else that was already enabled in the find filter. The all keyword is very useful for this reason. The all keyword would enable or turn on all the find filter options. It can also be prefixed with no to turn off all find filter options. Let's have our function disable and turn off everything in the skill find filter, and then just enable and turn on connect line segments. Now that the find filter is set, we can either programmatically select an area or ask the user to select the area. The axlSingleSelectBox function with no parameters will prompt the user to select an area in the PCB editor drawing area. There are a set of axlSelect functions for varying situations. The set of single functions clear the contents of the selection set and then add the newly selected items into the selection set, while the add set of functions do not clear the contents of the selection set and cumulatively add any newly selected elements to the selection set, and the subset of selection functions allow you to remove existing items from the selection set. Much like the interactive model, you can select by box or rectangle, by point or by name, and also programmatically add or remove individual dbids to the selection set. We are using the axlSingleSelectBox, which will clear the contents of the selection set, and then add new elements based on visibility, the find filter, and the area that the user selects. The axlSelect functions are blocking functions, so the skill function will wait for the user to respond with an area selection before continuing. After the user enters the area, the items are added to the selection set, and the axlGetSelSet function can be used to get a list of items that are currently in the selection set, and will store them in the variable cline segs. This completes our selection mechanism, and we can then loop over all the cline seg dbids that were selected. For each of the cline dbids selected, we'll get the width with the dash greater than width operator, and the endpoints with the dash greater than start end operator. We'll calculate the length of the segment by sending the endpoints to the axlDistance function, and if this length is less than half the width, then we'll print a message to the console. As we saw in a previous training byte, the return value of our function is currently set to the set of segments that our foreach loop iterated over. So we'll return the value of a counter that will keep track of the number of small segments that were found and make that integer our return value. When we load and run our function, we see that the console window has prompted us to select an area, and our skill function waits for the user to respond. When we respond, all the segments in the selected area are checked, and our small segment is reported. If we zoom out, we can select a larger area and see that we find 3 small segments in our design. In summary, Skill provides API functions to allow you to programmatically select items similar to the PCB editor interactive selection mechanism. And it is a fairly trivial exercise to write a skill function that allows the user to select an area and then report any C-line segments in the area whose length is less than half of its width.